Welcome back to another episode of Meredith with a Y. I am your host, Meredith Willits, and today we have Dave Garrison, leadership strategist and frequent expert on CNBC, CNN, and the Wall Street Journal. With over 25 years of experience as a CEO and strategic advisor, Dave has reshaped how organizations achieve peak performance. So stay with me. Hello, everyone. This is Meredith with a Y, and I am your host, Meredith Willits. Today, we are going to go deep, changing lives, and I am giving you the keys to the castle. Dave, thanks so much for having me on and your patience with my word strategist. Jesus, it's strategist, not even. I didn't even get that right.
In Scrabble, it's awesome. Any way you spell it.
That's so awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. You're an expert all over television, all over the news. You're bringing a whole new way of looking at like the way people are leading in business. You wrote a book on this, The Buying Advantage. So what are you seeing and how are you coaching these CEOs to change everything about the way that they've always led?
Yeah, a great question, Meredith. You know, first of all, I've never met a CEO or a C-suite leader who wakes up in the morning and says, geez, let's create a bad culture here. Let's create an environment of disengagement. People are trying the hardest they can, the best way they know how. But here are some of the challenges. For the last 30 years, in any industrialized country you look at, people basically say, I don't really care that much about work, as measured by the engagement scores we see from Gallup. Most recently, in the last week, Gallup has said the US has reached a 10-year low in engagement, and it's true in other industrialized countries. So think about it in general terms. A net of 1 out of 3 people care about the work they're doing. And I see that as human waste. It's waste of life. It's waste of leadership, but it's not the leader's fault. We have not seen methods. We've not been taught methods that allow us to create an environment of engagement. And frankly, these same methods work whether you're talking about your home, your life, your work, it's all the same. But here's what's changed in the workplace. 3 factors. 1, during the pandemic, people rethought what it means to work and what they were willing to give up to work. Am I willing to do that commute? Am I willing to leave my kids in childcare? Am I willing to? And so work has to have a more meaningful purpose to make it worthwhile to sacrifice. So people are looking for purpose more than they ever have. Yeah. 2, Generation Z, those lazy kids, those kids who don't really want to work, who have no work ethic, which is exactly what the elders have said about every single generation, including you and me, that have come along. But Gen Z is different, as every generation is different. And these are generalizations, but different because in addition to money, it's important to have impact. Yeah. How am I making a difference? It's important for values alignment, and it's important for purpose. So 3 things they're looking for in the workplace. And it costs organizations 0 to provide what they're looking for. The myth that leaders have is that money is what counts, and turns out not so much. And the third trend is uncertainty. I mean, gosh, just look at the headlines any single day, or look at TikTok. We are bombarded by, are we headed towards another war? And what about the tariffs and recession and blah, 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 blah. And so leaders have the opportunity, and I think an obligation, to provide certainty so that people are not distracted, to give them a sense of comfort in the environment. So 3 things have changed that have put new demands on leaders that, frankly, leaders didn't need because there's already enough to do.
Well, it's interesting because I think that a lot of people that what I'm seeing on TikTok, I made a video it's going viral on Instagram right now about, would we rather pay for daycare, childcare, so that parents can work and put their kids in a safe environment where they're, raised up and playing with friends, or would you rather pay for prisons? And people are like, I'm not paying for your childcare. I didn't have anyone pay for my childcare. I had it rough. It's like, bro, no offense, but childcare is like $2,000 a month per child right now. Like, you didn't have it that bad either. Like, I remember paying like $100 a week for childcare. But I think that the problem is a lot of times leaders that are Gen X and otherwise older than us, boomers, etc., we have a hard time letting our guard down, softening our outer shell and saying, I actually want it better for my children. I want it better for the next generation. I want them to have time off. I don't want them to work 70 hours a week. I want them to feel valued. And I think a lot of it is that the leadership, I don't know what you're saying, has a really difficult time. I paid my dues and so should they, getting out of their own way. So although what you're saying is this is something that costs nothing, I think that it actually costs the Gen X boomers ego
Yes.
and their crusty exterior of, if it was good enough for me, it could be good enough for you, and you need to do it the hard way. We're seeing being called back into the office 5 days a week because damn it, you better be here 8 hours a day. And I don't really know if you're going for a walk in the middle of the day. And if you're going for a walk, I'm not freaking ass paying for it. And so I think that the cost is ego.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. And, in today's newspapers, you'll see the Uber CEO saying, you'll come back or else. And what's interesting is that might be fine as a policy, but the attitude of or else is not very conducive to an environment that is inviting people's participation and creativity. That's like you're being punished.
Yep.
Come to the office. And most offices have no idea how to have effective meetings. Meetings are the biggest waste of time. And in the Buy-in Advantage book, we talk about, let's stop this waste of time meetings. And there are some specific ways to do that. But here are 4 myths that I think leaders have that create this hardened shell. One is, we have all the answers. And we have all the answers because we've earned the position and the person before us had all the answers. So damn it, now it's my turn. And if you have all the answers, then you don't need anybody else. If you don't need anybody else, you're going to have an environment of disengagement and you won't get the best results, but you'll feel really good. So if your purpose is feeding your ego, go for it. If your purpose is getting the best results, reconsider that all of us are smarter than any of us, because we all have those blind spots, as you know. We have our 6. We can't see our 6. Other people can. So all of us, smarter than any of us, hopefully will cause people to rethink that hard ass shell. Number 2, the leaders' measures, what they're asked about all the time, Gen X, boomers, doesn't matter, is they get metrics questions and P&L questions. Nobody says, how is your culture? What are you doing on culture today? And so we're looking at indicators that don't really help us. And the third great lie is it's all about money. I gave them a raise. How come they don't appreciate it? Not recognizing that the environment in which people work makes a big difference. People will leave for a pay cut if the environment is more supportive, if the purpose is more aligned, and the values are more aligned.
Yeah, my sister actually works for Marriott, and that is a company that really pushes culture and
Yes.
talks about culture, which is pretty fascinating. And I mean, if you think about a hotel and culture, that's their bread and butter from the minute you walk in the door. What does the place feel like? What are the vibe of the people that work there? Unfortunately, a lot of businesses, the customer never really walks through the door, so to speak. And so they don't really maybe understand the tactile vibe, if you will, of, because they're not coming in. It's not a part of who we are as a business, as a brand. But I think that the customer facing brand has to be aware of culture because their employees are touching the consumer every second of the day. So you probably see that more inside of those, Six Flags touches customers every day, things of that nature. But it's the ones that don't necessarily have a customer facing situation where they might not. You do see in places like, let's say, LinkedIn or these Tarte, those type of companies where it's wear jeans. Maybe on Friday at noon, they bust out the booze, or play pickle in the backyard, or have more team building situations. These companies that are being led at this time, CEOs are in their 40s, which would be millennials, I believe. We're definitely seeing where they're trying to foster the relationship of the employees that make them want to show up. Like, you don't have to wear a suit and tie if you're just going to come and sit in a desk. That's insanity. But I think that the leaders, as you're saying, they're looking at the bottom line. And I talked to a gal the other day on the podcast where it was like, she talks about leading from the ground up, right? The people who are touching the clients and customers and teaching the bosses, hey, this is what is needed. Those people really need to show up for a reason, because they can go make money on TikTok. They can go make money as an entrepreneur. You have to give them a reason to want to show up to work every day and make it make sense. And I think that's what you're talking about, is it's not always the bottom line with these younger folks. They want time off. They want it to matter.
Yeah, that flexibility is really important. And I think another myth is, if I put in ping pong tables, if we do pickle in the backyard, if we do beer blast on Friday afternoons, then it'll be a great place to work. And in fact, the data shows people appreciate that, but it doesn't make them want to stay. It doesn't make the environment any better. Might make it more fun temporarily. But what is really important are things like inviting their opinion in how we make decisions. And so let me give you a really simple example of how leaders can show up. And yes, they have to swallow some ego. Here's a typical leader showing up and is inspired over the weekend or on their morning run with some great idea and says, Meredith, I've got this great idea. You know what we ought to do? And they tell you their great idea. And they've already said to you, it's a great idea. What are you supposed to say? Oh, great idea, boss. And so you've just cut them out of the process without ever intending to. So with the best of intent, you've just destroyed culture. An alternative is to take the time and the effort to say to yourself, what does my great idea address? What is the desired outcome? What am I trying to attack here? What's the issue? And then, how do I know my idea is great? You have a checklist in your head, whether you're aware of it or not, that informs your great idea. You're excited about it because it 1, 2, 3, 4, not what the elements are, but what checklist items it meets. Mm-hmm. So what if we flip this scenario and we walked in and said, Meredith, I've got this idea so we could really improve the customer's experience. And what I considered when I came up with an idea I had was, how much time will it take? How simple is it? Can we repeat it 100% of the time? I would like you to add to those criteria. I would like you to think about things we could do as well, and then compare notes. So as opposed to telling people what you think is true, compare notes and invite them into solutions so that it becomes our solution, and you might actually get a better idea or different ideas because you can't see your 6. And so we, in the book, The Buying Advantage, we call this leaders go last, except when it comes to vulnerability, and then leaders are first.
I mean, it sounds like you are trying to just break the world in half right now.
Yes. That's just in the morning.
Hey, can you go to my parents' house and have a conversation with like them and just be like, hey, Meredith's got great ideas. You should listen to her. Which I always laugh, because I remember this one time, you'll get a kick out of this. I was telling my mom about Trader Joe's. This was like forever ago, right? Like when Trader Joe's, I'm like, Mom, you got to see this place. It's awesome. It's great meals for like, 2 people. Like it's great. It's small. It's 1 can of diced tomatoes instead of 40. And hey, on Saturdays, they actually have a farmer's market in the parking lot. So like, let's one up it. Right. And and then it had to be like 6 months later. She's like, Meredith, Nancy called me and told me about this place called Trader Joe's. And on Saturday, they have a farmer's market. And I'm just like, bruh, I literally told you about that 6 months ago. And I'm seeing with so I'm Gen X, I'm seeing with my generation and myself anyways, I'm really open to listening to my 16-year-old tell me what a shitty parent I can be. Like I really like take it. I'm like, and I actually just made a video about this. I'm like, if you're not listening to your kids, you're missing out. And I think to your book and to your point and to what you're trying to show is these kids know shit.
Yeah. Yeah. They have an experience that's not yours, and they see the world differently than you do, and we can learn from them. So an example with your kid is, if you're concerned about setting a ground rule about time to be in on Friday nights or Saturday nights, how about if you set the desired outcome? You know what? I think it's really important we have alignment on what time it's okay to come in Friday nights. What I'm concerned about is primarily your safety, something that's easy to remember and we can both agree to. Would you give that some thought? I'd like to know what your thoughts are, and invite them to come back to you. And if they say 2 a.m.,
Right.
then you get to say, I must have missed on a criteria. Let me add this criteria, and then say, or say, how did you come up with 2 a.m.? I'm really
Right.
curious to learn.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm laughing just because of the fact that, can you imagine going to our parents and having this conversation, or our parents being like, "Meredith, Dave, I'd like to know your thoughts on your curfew." They'd be like, "Listen here, you're going to do XYZ." So
Right.
I think, I mean, like, and it's interesting because I think that you're like probably the third or fourth person that's come on within the last couple months talking about really reinventing the way that we look at all of it.
Yes.
And, like you said, to your point of COVID, is I think that it deprogrammed all of us, to what we thought had to be
Yes.
into what can be,
Yes.
what your life can look like, and um it woke a lot of us up. Like, do you want to live downtown? Do you want to live on a farm? Do you have to fly all over creation to have a meeting? I remember when my husband got this job and at a car dealership for a couple, like maybe a year, and he was helping as a consultant. And the powers that be, the owners, would watch him on the computer and say, "You have to go out and move cars. You have to go pick weeds. Someone needs to be opening the door for customers." And he's like, "I'm creating an entire sales plan," which eventually Chevy took, and they use that now, where they make appointments and then they bring them in. That's exactly what my husband was working on, etc. Instead of like pulling weeds, opening doors, and moving cars for the sake of it. But that old school mentality of, you, if you're not physically moving, you're not doing anything. And I know, even with myself, my kids get on me because they'll come and sit down and I'm like, "Is your room clean? Did you do your homework?" Like, as soon as I see laziness or sedentary, or, not, "Is your home," it is literally in us, as sitting and doing nothing is doing nothing. And it's like, "Bro, mom, I just want to sit next to you." Like, oh. So, I mean, this is in us. This is in the sinew. How did you realize that this was a thing that could and should happen, to the point where now you're on TV, now you're in the Wall Street Journal, now you're all over, now you're writing a book? Where did this come from in you, that you realized that this was a need, a necessity, and had to happen? Because you're not a millennial. I know it. No matter what you tell me.
No, I'm a Gen Xer. Um, you know, it really came about because about 10 years ago, I realized that my passion was really about seeing people achieve and seeing teams achieve what they didn't think was possible. It's like, let's really up the game. And that's where my juice came from. It's what really excited me. And I realized I didn't need to do any of the other stuff. I didn't need to be the public company CEO. I didn't need to be blah, blah, blah. And that was a humbling and hard realization. And then it was going out to gather the tools from other people's experience and from learning about things like neural linguistic programming and how we choose to show up. And so that led me down a journey, and I've learned from a lot of people on the way. And those lessons are kind of codified in the Buy an Advantage book, because it's so much stuff I had to unlearn, frankly, because I was really great at telling people what to do. I was really good at that.
Yeah. I think it comes natural for us because we were told what to do, and then we turn around and we can do it. What have you noticed when you are working with CEOs? What do you notice as being some of their struggles? I mean, I'm sure it's in the book as well, but that you're like, wow, like, if you see this and you're watching this or you're listening to this podcast right now, what are some things when you're like, oh yeah, like, if you're doing these things, if you're feeling this way with your team, this, you need to read this book because you're missing the point.
Yeah, and look, I've felt the same way. What I'm going to describe, I've felt, and it's like, boy, if my team only had the same enthusiasm I did, if they only cared as much as I did, if they only blah, 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 blah. And what I realized is that people, if I've selected the right people and we're aligned on purpose and values, then, and we have a discussion, which is a two-way discussion about what it is we want to get done, people will do amazing things. But so often, if we have, let's use performance reviews as an example. I'll go into a room of 100 CEOs and say, raise your hand if you love to do performance reviews. And that one weirdo might raise their hand, and they're uncomfortable for me because it makes me feel like I'm judge and jury, and this awkward formula of, I'll tell you one good thing you're doing, Meredith, and here are 3 things you're really screwing up on, is like, this formula is totally backwards. It's written by the lawyers for the lawyers to protect you in court. And it's like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
What if instead we rewrote the script and said, let's sit down and agree what it's important to get done over the next period of time and how we're going to measure it and what the evidence it's done will be. And then I can go to you and say, Meredith, we're going to do a review in 2 days. Would you please give them some thought on how you are doing against these things and let you drive the review, because you're with you 24/7. I'm not. How could I possibly do a review for you, especially when you're a remote worker? And so I might observe things, but I shouldn't be leading the review. You should.
Wow.
And then you're going to get 70 or 80% of what I see. And then I can ask questions. Instead of telling you you're missing it, I don't know if you're missing it or not. I can tell you what I observe and say, Meredith, what do you make of that? How should I be thinking about this? And make it a done with, not a done to, as opposed to, hold your breath, Meredith, here we go. It's review day. Let's go to, hey, how can we check in and celebrate what we've done and recognize what we could do better, because you're leading the conversation based on what clear agreement we have.
Well, it's so funny. Like, you're sitting there talking about that, and it's just like, there's so much good that can come from that cohesive relationship. And you, like, looking at doctors and lawyers, to me, are like the most obvious, where they go in with all these great ideas. Like, they're fresh out of law school, they're fresh out of med school, they're going to save the world. And then you talk to them in 10 or 15 years and they're grizzled and they're jaded, and the whole thing's gone to hell in a handbasket. And I think that what I'm hearing from you is the old way creates that dead feeling inside from employees, where you're just like, there's really no reason. My boss doesn't listen to me. Nothing changes anyways.
Right.
And the new way is, at 10 years, at 15 years, your employees are still invigorated. They're still excited to be whomever they aspired to be out of school, and they're still making that difference. And my thing is, if someone respects their boss and the vision and the mission, it's that old adage, like, they'll go through a wall for you, right? They'll do it. They'll like, where are you going, boss? Like, what do you need from me, boss? Right. And I think that we get apathetic employees and apathetic middle management when they are working with CEOs and bosses who they know, if I walk in with 22 good ideas, I'm going to walk out with 22 of them most likely shot down, because he's the smartest guy in the room and he's not putting that sword down anytime soon. And they don't realize that then you have employees that just, like, they do just show up. They do use a mouse mover, if you know what.
Yeah, let's keep the screen alive so it looks like I'm doing something.
Looks like I'm doing something. And I don't,
yeah.
and I don't really give a shit if I'm doing anything today, because no one cares that I'm here anyways. I'm just doing stuff. So, like, what are some traditional company perks that are different, and that what you're seeing is like the future?
Yeah, I don't think about it in perks. I think about it in behaviors. So let's go back to that company where they're grizzled and they're burned out, et cetera. People went into law, or people went into medicine with good intent. They went in because because they're enthusiastic about it. They thought they could make a difference, and they've lost touch with the difference they can make. So one question is, Does your organization have a compelling purpose? Compelling purpose is a simple phrase that addresses the question of why bother? Why bother? So back in the day, Walt Disney had two simple words: create happiness. Everything he did in his organization was about creating happiness, whether it's a theme
Simple.
park, a movie, a character, or whatever. Sam Walton, back in the day, had an idea to put money back into families' pocketbooks. And so if you look at everything Walmart has done, it's about that. So yeah, you can criticize them and say they've got part-time employees, so they don't pay great benefits. But you know what? It's all in line with what their compelling purpose is. So making money is never a compelling purpose. So I would ask first that doctor or lawyer, hey, can you tell me where you are now? Why bother? How are you making a difference in lives? Other than your individual work, how are you collectively making a difference in lives? And then instead of the perk is inviting people in to make important decisions and have impact. And I'll give you an example from healthcare. A hospital needed, for whatever reason, to change the number of beds per nurse. Beds per nurse. We need to increase the number of beds per nurse on staffing. And so what they did was the administrator came down and said, okay, nurses, here we go. Beginning on Monday, we're going to increase the number of beds per nurse by 30%. And they did it because they needed to save money. So
Yeah.
here's what happened. About a third of the nursing staff left, and they had to hire traveling nurses at a significantly higher costs, and costs went up.
Yep.
Now, imagine if they had just done that in a different way. Imagine if the administrator had said, you know what? We have an edict that says we need to increase number of beds per nurse. That's the desired outcome. The criteria is something we need to be able to implement that's within the law, that we can do and not destroy ego or cause people to leave. What are your ideas on how to do that? And invite the nurses in, because the people doing the work actually have the best ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and just even thinking about the logistics of that, 30 nurses, 30 beds, one nurse, that means you're like 2 minutes per bed per hour,
Yeah.
or whatever, per minute or whatever. Like and you have to say, like, just so you know that that's what it looks like. So if I even need to bring somebody, like, I'm literally in and out of their room in seconds, and the logistics. And I know regular nurses make X and traveling nurses make X times 2, at
Yeah.
least, sometimes time 3, sometimes with signing bonuses. So yeah, it is. But that goes back to putting the ego away. So what, with everything that we're talking about here, when do you think it is? What does it happen when the employee just out and out stops caring?
It's easy. You'll see a couple of things. They'll do just what's asked and no more. You'll see sick days go up. You'll see turnover go up. You'll see participation in meetings, head nodding, donkey nod, as one of my clients calls it, which is great. People just don't care, and you'll know it. You don't have to ask. What's the difference between walking into Nordstrom's and walking into DMV to get your license renewed? Do you have to see a poster on the wall? Do you have to ask anybody what it's like there, or can you feel it? You don't need posters to feel it. You can feel it. And so here's the thing. If the person next to me doesn't care and it's okay, it's giving me permission not to care. It's like an insidious disease that runs through the organization. And so if that's okay, then that's okay. And the boss will just tell you what to do. And you say, sure, I'm glad to do it. And you can have a great attitude. So it's not about, are we doing what we're asked? It's about, are we bringing our full selves to work? Are we bringing Friday night lights? Are we bringing the same person that shows up on the high school football stands on Friday night to work? Or did we leave that in the parking lot and just tell me what to do, Meredith? Just tell me what to do. I'm glad to do it. What do you want me to do?
What do you see as some evolving leadership trends moving forward in the world?
I think the leaders who are able to balance a genuine interest in people and an ability to leverage people with a deep understanding of their business will be the leaders of the future. And the I must tell you what to do because I've got metrics to reach will be the leaders of the past. And here's why. It's really simple. Competition is the law of the day. It's the law of the jungle. And those companies that leverage people always have higher profits, lower turnover, better customer service, better safety records, even if they're not in a customer environment, like they see the customers, even if it's behind the scenes where it's a Google or it's, it's a LinkedIn. Google did a transformational study a number of years back because they spend millions of dollars on teams. And so they were curious what makes the best teams. As you know, Project Aristotle, they said, oh, it's probably the smartest people. Oh, it's the people who went to Oxford and Harvard. Oh, it's the people who worked the hardest and put in the longest hours. They found the most effective teams are, in fact, the teams where it's the highest degree of trust. So the question is, as a leader, how can you create an environment of trust? And there are two prerequisites we've seen in game-changing organizations that create environments of trust. The first one is recognize human beings, not human doings. So recognize people as people. And that's like asking, how are you doing? And if they say fine, fine is an acronym for feelings inside never expressed. So if you just drive right by fine and you go, okay, here's what I want you to do, you've just said, I don't care about you as a human. But if you ask, hey, what are you celebrating personally? I'm really curious to know. Or, tell me about where you grew up, or something about them as a human. So connect with humans is the first prerequisite of trust. The second is to have a safe space, as you know, psychological safety, as it's called, which means vulnerability, which means the leaders have to go first. You have to be vulnerable as a leader. And you might say, you know what? I have a lot of experience. I may not have all the answers, or I'm not sure the best way to do this, or I would really appreciate your help in getting this done. So being vulnerable first creates this environment of trust. Trust creates results.
When I'm listening to you and you said, what are you celebrating right now versus how are you doing? Like those are literally game-changing polar opposites. I remember when I worked before I married my husband and I knew everything about my boss's family. Like when I say like their kids, their spouses, their kids, what their wife's doing, like everything. And I remember after working there probably 3 years, 100% they didn't know my kids' names. And I only had 2 kids. And I'm just like, and like, how is your son? And it's like, oh my God, his name's Cody. That's such it's 4 letters. Like, how do you, it's such a small office and it's been 3 years. But it does make a difference when you ask those kind of like maybe probing or next level questions where you're actually getting to know the person. And I do see this as being a challenge, even for the younger generations, is when there is a employee who is going through a trauma and is having a hard time and they are expressing that, to not see it as an excuse and understand that it really could be a reason, not
Yes.
an excuse for what's going on in their life. What would you say if someone's listening to this right now? What would you say these are the top 4 or 5 things that you can do right this second, starting today when you walk into the office? These are some things, 5 things you can do today that cost you nothing, and it's just an internal shift and the way that you interact with your employees.
Yeah, the first is ask questions instead of telling things. Ask questions, ask lots of questions. And let me give you a practical example. In the book, we talk about a restaurant, very successful restaurant in Las Vegas that has a whiteboard. They've got minimum wage workers. And on the whiteboard, when you get there, they ask you to write down on a number on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling today? And if they see a number under 7, the supervisor notes it and goes to that person and says, gee, I noticed you were a 4. Can you tell me what's going on? I learned this from a sports figure named Dusty Baker, who's general manager, baseball. And I said, Dusty, I don't mean to be a flippant, but what do you do? And he said, you know what? I got all these talented men playing 160 something times, and they know what to do. That's why we selected them.
Yeah.
I can't help them be a better second baseman, but what I know is they've got wives and kids and parents and issues and leases and all that stuff. I can help them from being distracted. So part of my job is to help them deal with, what resources do we need for your parents? How do we get your wife's illness taken care of? and really think about them as people. And so it's
Wow.
hard to know people unless you know what people are celebrating or what they're challenged by. And you can tell that if you deeply listen and care. And it doesn't mean you are a social worker. It means you are a human being acknowledging other human beings, because being seen is a basic human need. And if we assume at work we're not seen, then we're just, okay, I won't see you either. It's fine.
Yeah.
Where are we going to go to lunch?
Bare
Another,
minimum. Yeah, lunch. When do I leave? What time is lunch? When's my
yeah,
break? Yeah.
yeah. I wonder what they have in the snack room today. I wonder if they brought anything else in. So another technique that we know that costs nothing that is important is what we call get on board or connection questions. And sometimes, and at the beginning of any staff meeting, the beginning of any and every staff meeting. And that simply looks like a connection where I get to learn about you as a human. Most of your beliefs, as you know, are formed under the age of 10 or 12. And so I get the opportunity to learn about little Meredith. And the way I do that is simply to say, is to pick an emotion and ask you about your youth and that emotion. Meredith, can you tell me a time when you were really surprised by something that happened under the age of 12? And if I ask that enough and I answer first and I am vulnerable, it gives you permission to be vulnerable. And we'll all learn about each other as humans, because human doings get a lot more done than human beings. So that's
Yeah.
number two. Number three is simply to slow down to include people, slow down to include people, to gather their input. And sometimes leaders say, I don't have time for that. I'm in a hurry. And it's like, oh, so you have time to re-interview and spend a lot of money and wasted effort on training.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be easier if we just slowed down to say, what are different ways that we could do this, and ask your team, what challenges are we running into to be successful? What do you guys see? How about if we ask them? Because what they tell us, the words that they choose, are as important as any metrics. The challenge with the KPIs, the challenge with the P&L, it tells us what happened 6 months ago, which is
Hmm.
awesome. But that's like driving down 405, looking in the rearview mirror at 80 miles an hour. It's
Yeah.
insane, but we do it again and again and again when we could look at the here and now, which is people's experience.
Yeah. I mean, it's so good. Those are so easy too. And when you were talking right there, I was thinking, about some of my jobs that I've had in my life where I actually had a boss and the boss wasn't me. And I was thinking about like how great it would have felt to be like, like, how you doing today? Or, like, boy, you did a great job cleaning up your cash register area, or like just anything. And it's instead of like, oh, you left some dust over there or there's some dirt. And like even me talking to you right now, I find that in my parenting, like instead of saying, wow, your room looked really great this morning, I'm like, hey, there's still some crap next to your bed. Like instead of finding the flaws and the faults, we start
Right.
looking and finding the 80% that's good instead of the 20% that's bad. But I think that we just have to maybe think about what we would want to hear, what would inspire us, what would make us want to work harder. And what we do, I mean, everyone has a boss unless you're the owner. So, like, what's ownership saying to you if you're the CEO? What makes you work harder as a CEO? Is it only the bonus?
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
Money's a very short-term motivator. And there's a phrase we use called Saturday night shootings that our team uses with clients. And Saturday night drive-by shootings are when you say, hey, Meredith, good job. And you're wondering, do you have any idea what I do? What do you mean good job? I did 100 things. Which of the 100 things are you referring to? As
Right.
opposed to saying, hey, you know what? You did a really great job in making this area appear professional and neat, which really plays to our company value of fill in the blank.
Yeah.
I appreciate you doing that. It makes such a difference. That is a very different impact than saying, hey, good job.
Yeah. It makes your spine straight. You know what I mean? Like just even imagining hearing that, you're like, yeah, I guess I did do a good job, And then waltz on over to your location and you make it even better, like you fluff a couple other things like, huh, people are noticing. And I think that that's, maybe what we're missing is, it's okay if the next generation, it's okay if our employees don't have it as hard as us. It's okay if we say nice things. They're not going to take advantage of us. It's okay to get feedback. You don't have to take all of it, but you're really bringing people in. And if you are listening to this and you're out there and you're like, boy, I want to be a better boss, sometimes it might take even therapy of figuring out, like, why am I so hard pressed to change the way I'm doing things? Why am I fighting this so much when book after podcast is coming out saying leadership now is bottom up, not top down? And that's the way to really connect with other businesses, your clients, your people that are buying off of you. There's a trend here. Life is changing. And books like The Buying Advantage are a like, if you remember, there was no book to raise kids. Like, there's now a book to be a better CEO. Like, it exists now. Like,
Uh,
we're changing things, and the Zig Ziglars, I'm sure, have their place, but there's a lot of books that are coming out right now, like yours, that are saying, hey, post COVID, you need to realize that you're managing a different human, literally a
yes.
different human being that is in the workforce, that are motivated by very different things. It's not the biggest paycheck, it's time off, it's feeling included. And the only way to hear that is by talking to your staff, your employees.
Yeah, and Meredith, we talked before about meetings, which are universally cited as the biggest waste of time. So maybe, I don't know this, maybe Uber has the best, most effective meetings in the world. I don't know that. It would be an outlier if they did. Meetings often feature death by update. So who hasn't been in the weekly staff meeting where we say, Meredith, tell us about operations, what's going on?
Yeah.
Hey, real estate, what about over there? HR, what you got? It's like, what a waste of time. So meetings where so a couple things about meetings. The work has to be done before meetings to make them effective. Whoever is running the meeting needs to think about what is the issue we're trying to address, or what do we want from this meeting. Updates don't count. If
Yeah.
you want updates, put them in writing, put them ahead of time, and then in the meeting, and distribute them. In the meeting, just ask, what questions do we have about the update? So information distributed ahead of time, really important for effective meetings, because half of us humans think about stuff overnight. So if you want to have a real discussion, you've lost half the people if you introduce the data at the meeting. You
Yeah.
might have the meeting tomorrow to finish. But effective meetings also include people. And the way we do that is at the beginning of the meeting to say, Meredith, okay, before we get started, what are your expectations for this meeting? What would make this a great use of your time? And you might say something that's totally off the wall, which is fine. I'm going to validate it and say, you know what, Meredith, we may not get to that one today, but I'd like to do that in a one-on-one or at the next meeting if that's okay with you. Expectations from the people who are in the meeting, so it's our meeting and everybody's heard out of the box. Because if people aren't heard in the first 2 minutes of a meeting, it's just like, yeah, whatever. And they're thinking about what it is they last did or have yet to do.
Yeah.
And at the end of the meeting, not only check back in on those expectations, how did we do against those to know about unmet needs? But secondly, to say, let's check in on process. We call this instant analysis in the book. It's a simple question. What worked about this meeting? What didn't work? And
Yeah.
people in the meeting to give you an analysis so you can make the next meeting better, because you can't possibly know what they experienced in your meeting unless you ask. But we don't ask because, oh, we're in a hurry. I got to go to another meeting. Got another call. So it just says to me, one, you don't care if you have to go to another call. And two, you don't plan time very well, because you could 5 minutes before the end of the meeting have said, I want to make sure I understand what's our commitment, who's going to do what, and what worked and didn't work in
Yeah.
every single meeting, and let us co-create, done with, not done to, great meetings so we don't waste any more time. We don't have it to waste.
I have a friend, he's a president of a bank, and he will only do 30-minute meetings. If you can't figure it out in 30 minutes, he's out. Like, you literally have him for 30 minutes, and that is it. You better be very prepared to present or ask or whatever. And he's like, on to the next thing. If you can't get it done in 30 minutes, you weren't ready to begin with. Because sometimes I'll watch my husband and he'll be in meetings for like hours, and I'm like, how do you get anything done? All you do is sit in meetings all day. Like, I would die. I'm like, dude, your link, or what is it? Their Calendly, it needs to be 30-minute increments, and that's it. No hours at all. I mean, you're beating a dead horse at that point, or just being pleasant. Like, stop the insanity.
Well, you know what? It tends to be ping pong. You watch two people argue about points. Another thing we talk about in the buy-in advantage is list all the different ideas and then simply do a silent vote. Just do a tally. I want you to apply all of your experience and tell me which idea you think would have the biggest impact, because we've already agreed on criteria. We've already agreed on desired outcome. So based on your experience, I don't want to hear discussion. I want to hear where you'd place your votes. And then collectively, because all of us are smarter than any of us, we'll see what rises to the top. It doesn't mean we won't do the other ideas. It means we'll do this one first, because collectively we've agreed that's most impactful. No discussion, no debate. Don't waste my time.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that a lot of times we think we know what everyone wants. I mean, I know as a mom, I do that. I think that I know what my family is going to choose, and then all of a sudden I present it and they choose something completely different. I'm like, thank God I asked. Like, what the heck? And like, that's true for any situation, at work or at home. It's like, why don't you just get everyone together and see, like this Christmas we did it. I'm like, do you guys want gifts or do you want to go on a trip? And I was shocked. They all picked a trip. And I was like, yes, I finally made it to the trip phase of life.
Where did we go?
We ended up going on a cruise for Christmas, which was super fun. But like that, like we went to Portugal for Thanksgiving, but that wasn't really giving up anything. But the Christmas, they had to give up all gifts to go. And so I was shocked that they went along with it, but boy, was I happy.
Nice.
So yeah. So like, I think that we just need to communicate and put our egos aside. It's hard. We're never going to get rid of the ego. I think we need to look at it and go, hi, ego. I see you. You're here to help me. You're here to like keep me safe, but I'm going to walk around you and I'm going to get to the other side, and I don't have to attach myself to all my belief systems and all of who I believe myself to be, and get to a better place of, like you said, all of us is smarter than
Any of us,
which I love. Well, thank you so much for being here today and sharing nugget after nugget after nugget of wisdom. And the buy-in advantage is available where?
It's available at all your favorite book outlets beginning June 3rd. And you can go to buyinbook.com, BUYIN book.com, and you can download the free 46 techniques and questions for leaders to ask. And you can pre-order the book and all this other great stuff. Download a sample chapter. So buyinbook.com is a place you can go, and also be available on Audible, and it'll be available in Kindle as well.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for being here. You guys, there's way too many nuggets. Share this show with someone that you know that needs it. That doesn't mean necessarily your boss, but maybe you could just buy him a copy when it comes out. Like, that's okay. You can put it someplace inconspicuous. But thanks so much for being here. You've been a wealth of knowledge, and I hope everyone starts to figure this out, because the world's a much better place when we're working on it together and we're not apathetic 10, 15, 5 years from now, and not in a productive state and going to the next job and the next job. So thanks for sharing your wisdom. We appreciate it.
Meredith, thank you. Life is worth living, and being at a job is part of that, whether it's a job you create or you work for somebody else. So make it worthwhile. Get engaged.
Make it worthwhile. All right, guys. See you here next week. Thanks for listening. If you would like to connect on a more personal level, head over to meredithwillits.com or on Instagram at Meredith with a Y for behind-the-scene footage and outtakes. Please subscribe and come back each week for more Meredith with a Y. Thanks again for listening.